Can you hear me, James?
You are set to go, sir.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate all your work. I want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for October 14th, 2020. And if we could have the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Craig, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares,
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski, Commissioner Woods. He's here.
He's
here. Yep.
Commissioner Gill,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Here.
Commissioner Braverman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum. All of the full members are present.
Very good. Thank you very much. We don't have any changes on our agenda, I don't think, do we?
Correct. No changes.
Okay. We'll go right into public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes to use the Zoom raise hand function. If you have any questions, if you'd like to talk about anything, you can raise your hand. If not, we will have public participation during the meeting on other subjects. I want to remind all the commissioners that if you have a question tonight, just please use the raise hand function if you'd like to ask a question, please. Since there's nobody interested in the public participation, I'll go right into the next thing, which is our zoning enforcement officer report.
Mr. Chairman, the report is in your package. As I think everybody knows, Andrew Armstrong, the former CEO, has left the employment of Newington. We have new to the job, but not new to Newington CEO, Eric Hinckley. Eric has been the wetlands agent for a number of years, and his duties have been expanded now to include zoning enforcement. Eric is present tonight. He's been the CEO for all of a day, so I don't think he has too much to say, and I don't think he can answer any questions, but he is present if anybody wants to chat with him or say hi. Or
I'd like to welcome Eric on board and look forward to working with him. And we may want to set up a meeting with him in a future date just to go over enforcement suggestions from the board. We'll turn it over to any commissioners. Welcome on board, Mr. Hinckley, and look forward to be working with you.
Thanks, Dominic. Yeah, and if you always amenable to setting up a meeting, so any opportunity, just let me know once you guys know what you want, and we'll have a discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for attending tonight. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay, if there's any questions from the commissioners. Okay, the next thing is remarks by commissioners. If any commissioners have any remarks. We'll go into approval of minutes. We have the TPZ minutes of 23rd September 2020, regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Fox.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second?
Second by Sobieski.
And seconded by Commissioner Sobieski. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our first public hearing is petition 30-20. Could our secretary, Commissioner Havens, read that petition, please?
Certainly. Petition 30-20, zone change from BI, R7 and R12 to PD planned development at 33, 39, and 45 Spring Street 96, 108, 112, 116, 120, 126, and 129 Willard Ave, and 230 West Hill Road. Gibbs Oil Company applicant, Kenneth R. Slater Jr. Esquire, 225 Asylum Street, Hartford, contact. Description of petition 30-20. This is a petition to change the zone for 9 parcels on the east side of Willard Ave between the Connecticut Fast Track Station and Spring Street, and 2 parcels on the west side of Willard Avenue at the intersection with West Hill. The total area is 10 acres. Current zoning is a mix of R7 and R12, industrial and business zones. Requested zoning is planned development.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Is the applicant here? And if you could state your name for the record, I'd appreciate it, and give us an overview of what you're trying to do.
Yes, this is
Oh,
Ken Slater. Can
oh.
you hear me?
Hi, Ken. One second, please. I forgot to read the procedures for the public hearing. Craig, could you read the procedures for the public hearing, just so we have that covered, please?
Yes. Procedures for public hearings. The order of proceedings at public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitations should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. No case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Thank you, Craig. Attorney Slater, you could begin now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'll start by explaining how we got where we are, which was my client is Gibbs Oil, the owner of the Phillips 66, and they're interested in modernizing their facility and in continuing to include a Dunkin' Donuts. And in 2020, even before the pandemic, Dunkin' Donuts really can't serve its customers without a drive-through window. And, we've all recognized how valuable that is for a variety of services during the pandemic. But this was before the pandemic. We approached the planner and the economic development director, and we discussed with them what our options were. And the zones where drive-throughs were permitted are the Berlin Turnpike zone and the PD zone, which incorporates some of the uses allowed in the Berlin Turnpike zone. But that led to a discussion that, that would make sense for our site because of the fast track station and because of some of the recommendations contained in the plan of conservation and development associated with transit-oriented development. It would make sense to have a larger zone that would allow for development of tracks that are right now a hodgepodge of business, some residential and largely industrial, as shown in the map that has the various parcels that would be changed. So we went out to talking to the other property owners I don't represent, but explained to them what our interests were and why it seemed wise under the plan of conservation development and the zoning regulations to have a PD zone established in that area, which would it would eliminate the industrial zone of many of those parcels, which is incompatible with some of the nearby residential uses and the other uses that exist in that area, and would obviously allow everyone to do exactly what they're doing now as non-conforming uses. But if an opportunity came along, then the properties could be combined and it would enable mixed use development, a variety of development that this commission would review on a special permit basis. So the map that's shown right now reflects the property owners that were approached and agreed that their properties should be changed to PD zone. And they indicated that by submitting consent to the zone change. So all the properties that are shown within the dashed line on this image are the properties that would be within the PD zone on Spring Street and on Willard, and then across the street on the corner where the Pro Health is located, as well as my client's property where the Phillips 66 is. So we engaged our engineer to prepare a concept plan, which is one of the things that's required for your commission to consider a PD zone. Slightly unusual in the sense that across the street, we're not proposing any development of that at this point in time. But you, as the legislative body for the purposes of zoning, can look at the policy of what makes sense for the future use of this area. And so what our engineer did, and the narrative that's being shown now went through and referenced sections of the Plan of Conservation and Development. That's one of the things that you're supposed to consider. You're not bound by it, but it's one of the things you're supposed to consider in reviewing a district change. And we think that there's ample support in the Plan of Conservation and Development to change this area near the fast track station to allow that kind of planned development. So the engineers for Gibbs prepared a general concept plan that showed what possibilities would exist if the property owners on that side of the street were approached by a developer and they wanted to propose some kind of a mixed use development. So we just showed elevations of a potential building and a few building locations, but it's not a real plan in the sense that it's just a concept plan of what could happen. And that's it on the screen right there. The engineers for Gibbs showed how it would be feasible to have several mixed use developments, mixed use with retail and some residential, as well as parking fields in the middle, just to give a concept. But there really are a lot of uses that the commission could evaluate and under special permit standards and conclude and make sure that they're compatible with that use. So we think it should be an exciting opportunity for the town. But turning back to where we started, we also presented a concept plan, which is more than a concept plan. It's really the kind of thing that would be ready to be submitted for special permit site plan approval of the actual approved Phillips 66 station. So we submitted that also as a POD concept plan, but it's in more detail, and it's a real one in the sense that that's what Gibbs Oil wishes to do on its property. And if this PD zone, and this is an image showing that, I will say that Andrew Beelin from Gibbs Oil is online and would be available to answer any questions. And so is the engineer. But as I suggested to them, the details regarding a plan of how their property would be improved, the gas station would be improved with a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, et cetera, would all be scrutinized under a review process with your commission. So I didn't intend to get into any real detail on exactly what was proposed there, but do have it submitted as a concept plan. And it's a real one in the sense that if this PD zone is approved on this site, at least, then we will promptly be coming in with an application to make substantial improvements to the station, which I think would again be another improvement in that neighborhood. And it really, I think, subject to questions you might have, it's really as simple as that. When you want to paint the paintbrush of what zoning makes sense there, the existing hodgepodge of industrial, residential, and business is not nearly as suitable to the area or provide the kind of opportunities for development for the town of Newington than the PD zone would. And that's exactly what I think we've already determined is the kind of thing that should happen based on what you adopted in your Plan of Conservation and Development. So I'm happy to go into more detail, but that really is that's how we got here. And what sparked it is certainly our desire to improve that station. But I think it led into something that might be a bigger benefit to the town of Newington than just an improvement on my client's site. Now, I know that Mr. Minor had indicated in his report that he was going to, that the application was complete. We did have a signage issue when we were going to have it, so I appreciate the courtesy of the commission in rescheduling, because both Mr. Minor and I agreed that the signage needed to be modified in order to adequately comply with your regulations, and that was done prior to this hearing, and that enabled us to proceed tonight. I mean, happy to answer any questions that you might have, but it really is, I think, a relatively simple proposal. And what will come is applications in the future that would be enabled in a way that they certainly aren't now. And certainly, I don't think anyone would think that industrial development in that area is ideal for the town and the neighborhood.
Hey, thank you very much, Attorney Slater. I appreciate that. And I'll ask Craig if you'd like to give a short report before we go to the public, if you have anything to add.
Well, nothing to add, Mr. Chairman. As Attorney Slater mentioned, this zone change is anticipated by the plan of development, because it would certainly take advantage of the resources in that area, namely the CT Fast Track station. And it would clean up what is currently a bit of a hodgepodge of zoning. And I'm going to leave my comments at that point. I will certainly have more comments after we've heard from the public and after the commissioner or the commission has asked their questions or expressed their concerns. But that's all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Why don't we, unless the commissioners have a question, we'll go right to the public. Do any of the commissioners have a question for the applicant?
I have a question, Commissioner Penny.
Certainly. Go ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Sobieski.
I see on the application here, we're supposed to have a list of the owners of the property. I didn't see that here.
Yeah, Attorney Slater, I can speak to that. Yes, Commissioner Sobieski, they did submit a list of all the owners' names, and I have them in the file. I didn't include it in the packet because I thought it was kind of like inside baseball. But if any of the commissioners want to see that list of owners, or property owners within 500 feet, I can certainly send it to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Commissioner Claffey, you have a question?
Yeah, one question, and it's either Ken can answer it or Craig Minor can answer it. And I didn't see it in here. I just want to know how many abutters were engaged or given notice to try to make sure that we got everybody that had the free chance to engage with the Ken Slater and his group. Like I see the piece up here of all the ones that agreed, but how far did we go out, and did we notify them by mail, phone call, etc.? Just want to kind of open up how we as a town and a commission communicated with all the abutters.
I could jump in. This is Ken Slater. The entire area that's shown between Spring Street and Willard, though everyone was notified, and there were people that were given an opportunity to consent and join in. As indicated in the proposal, there's some historic residential properties, did not expect that they would be interested in coming on board. But I communicated with everyone on a couple of occasions and submitted the consent forms and a description of what the plan was, and that they could reach out to me if they had any questions at all. And that led to everyone being signed. I will say that on this map, parcel number 63, met with a gentleman who explained that property was the ownership of that property was in some transition with the family, and that he expected that I think a daughter might reach out to me, and she didn't. So frankly, I do expect that if that a development is ever, is proposed, I suspect that that owner would come in and would be asking to change to the PD zone as well. It just was a function of not really being able to get a decision maker to consent to that corner parcel. So, but all of the others were contacted. I will also say that there are a couple of parcels on West Hill Road. If you go just down from where ProHealth Physicians are, exactly, they were also approached and they were interested. Their concern was that they didn't want their residences to become non-conforming uses. But basically, at the time and place, if a developer came on that West Hill Road and thought there was a way to aggregate some of those parcels, there were property owners there that seemed interested in that. They just didn't want to join the zone change at that time. So that was the effort that I made, and had received correspondence from a couple of people that they were opposed to the change. Beyond that, you'll see from the map of which the vast majority of everyone agreed that it made sense to.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Thank you, Attorney Slater. Commissioner Fox, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chairman, I appreciate the fact that all the residents were advised of what was going on and was on board with it. I do have one other problem, maybe a little problem, maybe a big problem. As far as the signage is concerned, I drove by there today, and we have one sign on the corner of West Hill Road in Willard, and then a sign by the car wash. On the east side of Willard, you wouldn't think that any of the residences in that stretch of Willard Avenue from 126 down to 96 are involved, because the only sign is on the corner. Now, this brings me to the thought that not enough people around that area that are not involved in this zone change were aware that all the residences there are being are involved in this. And so I'm just wondering, Mr. Slater, if that should have been addressed when Craig had advised you that you need more to split out the signage.
I believe it was, Commissioner Fox. What Craig had, the original signage that went up was mistakenly put basically at the corner of West Hill Road and Willard. And that's, Mr. Miner and I agreed that there needed to be signage on the east side of Willard, and there also needed to be signage up on Spring Street. So an additional sign was purchased. And so signage was placed at the corner of West Hill, on the west side of Willard, on the east side of Willard, and on the Spring Street area where the zone was changed. So all of those were in, and Mr. Miner went out and confirmed that they were in. So I don't know whether one of them has recently been removed or it was missed, but there was one on the east side of Willard Ave.
Well, I guess if the town plan is okay with it, I'm not going to argue too much about it. And for now, I'll go for right now. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Is there any other questions from the commissioners? If not, I'm going to go to the public. At this time, it'll be public participation. Anybody in favor of this application or opposed? Timothy Furry, go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you could state your name and address for the record, I'd appreciate it.
Attorney Timothy Fury, 43 Bellevue Avenue, Bristol, Connecticut. I represent the owner of the property located at 230 West Hill Road at the corner of West Hill and Willard, which is 141 Willard Avenue, LLC. The principal of that LLC, Joseph Naples, is present with me here in Bristol. The building currently contains the Dunkin' Donuts facility, which faces on Willard Avenue, which is also owned by Mr. Naples in a different LLC, and the Pro Health facility, which the entire building, is, those who've been by it, was totally remodeled a year and a half ago, and rented to a Pro Health pediatrician group. As part of what we worked out with Pro Health for that very positive project, they have an option to, or not an option, a wish and a desire to lease the remaining portion of the building, which is currently housing the Dunkin' Donuts. And based on their desire to fully reutilize the structure, we began discussions some time ago with Gibbs Oil to relocate the Dunkin' franchise to the adjacent property in which we would become a tenant of them. We currently have a relationship with Gibbs Oil, which led to the discussion. If any of you, I know coming from the Berlin or from the Newington direction, you probably don't, but up on Route 20, just outside of Bradley Field, Gibbs Oil totally renovated an old Phillips Petroleum location into a modern facility, actually larger than the one that is proposed here. And the Dunkin' is a good part of it. It's a beautiful building. It's a well-designed structure. It's been very well received and very well maintained, by the community and all the parties. And we've had a great relationship with Gibbs Oil up there. Looking at your plan of development, I would agree with Attorney Slater. The plan of development right on its front page says the reuse of existing commercial and industrial properties is essential to continue grand list growth. The existing Phillips Petroleum site is a little long in the tooth and could use this type of investment. We think it would be a great complement to your community. And it would also enable us to continue the redevelopment of the corner. You may remember that the building before Pro Health housed a specialty grocery store. We had myriads of problems with this specialty grocery store. It was called the Asian Grocer, but it led to myriads of health-related issues and rats and other things that was a problem for the Dunkin' and also was a problem for some of the neighbors at 242 and 256. And we were constantly working with them to try to be positive in the neighborhood. So once Pro Health showed an interest in our corner, we terminated our relationship with the Asian Grocer at no small cost, and we're able to accentuate your grand list and the uses in the area, because I think the pediatrician's office was able to preserve a business in your community. It moved from another location here, and B was to be able to make it much stronger. So we would hope you would create this opportunity for us to finish the rejuvenation of our corner site and to allow the rejuvenation of the Phillips Petroleum site with us as a partner with them there. And we'd work out any of the site plan details, of course, as part of that. The site plan you see, the proposal, preliminary site plan, has been fully vetted by Dunkin' Corporate. They don't typically allow us to utilize their name in these kind of discussions, but we got ahead of it early, worked with them, and they are comfortable with what we've proposed and how Gibbs Oil went around designing that site for safety, for flow, et cetera. So anyway, I would hope you would support the project and give us the opportunity to make your community even stronger than it already is. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. And we appreciate the improvements on that corner property. That really came out very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Rose, if you have something, I'll acknowledge Rose Lyons, please.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Too had some questions about the signage that Commissioner Fox had questioned. I was over in that area at least 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks, and I saw the sign in front of a vacant lot, which I was aware that there was more than just that vacant lot involved, and there was some on Spring Street. I wonder if it meets the letter of the law, putting it just on one parcel of land when there's other parcels involved. It's kind of misleading to someone that has not been following this application. I just was wondering if you could also tell me that, is this common practice that when you change a zone, that the properties that have an application in also include properties on the other side of the road? I'm just not quite sure that I understand how that works. And also, should you vote on this, can you vote to just approve the Gibbs and not approve the other side? I think it's a great idea. I just don't know that I have confidence that enough people are going to voice their concerns, because very few people get onto the Zoom meetings, and I've learned that over the last few months. And when there was other changes proposed for that area, it seemed to be there was a lot more people involved and had more comments to make. We'll see what happens after I've said what I've said. So I'm really not opposed or in favor. It seems like a good idea to do it all at once at this time during COVID when you can't have in-person meetings. I'm hesitant about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Ed, you have the floor if you'd like. Yeah, is Ed Navo? Is it Edward?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm Edward Noy of Westchester Condos, and I object to the statement that was made that abutting properties were notified. Westchester Condos was not notified at all about this. I noticed that there was a bunch of signs in front of the Phillips 66 gas station. I contacted the town and asked what this was about. I was informed what it was about, and it also included the property across the street. I questioned why there was no signage indicating about the zoning meeting across the street, and then signs were put across the street. The signs only stayed there for a short period of time. Some signs were removed. People living across the street from the Willard Avenue area, that is also where Surrey Drive, between Surrey Drive and Willard, have absolutely no idea what's going on. So property owners are not informed at all what's going on. I don't like how it's kind of being slid in without the community knowing anything about it. I'm not really opposed or against the project, but I just believe that people need to be notified about their properties and what's going on in their neighborhood. And this needs to be done honestly, not hiding any facts.
Thank you very much, Edward. I appreciate your comments, and we will take them into consideration. Thank you. John?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Shalansky, and I live at 59 Southwood Road. I'm here to talk to you about the petition this evening. I want to start by thanking you for your service. I understand that it takes significant personal demands on anyone who cares to engage enough in public policy. I'm a retired elected official now living in Newington, and I have substantive experience in zoning and special development district policy development. I've reviewed the materials provided by the applicant, and I want to commend Attorney Slater for some of his work and his comments tonight. And I ask the commissioners to review his comments very carefully. And because of his comments and the proposal, I want to tell you in advance that I'm going to express my strong opposition to the petition at this particular time. I would suggest that you either deny the petition without prejudice, separate the items in the petition, or table the petition without prejudice. First of all, I want to say we have multiple issues here. We both have the transit-oriented district and a proposed Duncan redevelopment. And the plan of conservation and development calls for transit-oriented development in this area. And that makes a lot of sense for this area. The TOD has been proposed by the applicant, and as Attorney Slater has suggested, that's really backwards. Newington doesn't want anyone with economic interest to define our own town zone. The appropriate way, and I'm not trying to lecture here, but the better way to do this is to develop a TOD by creating a neighborhood charrette or community work groups to work and discuss what makes sense in concert with the TPZ and Economic Development Commission, and present a complete proposal to this body, the TPZ, that's been fully vetted by the community. That way the landowner knows what the town has established. We have to establish more than just this a TOD, the size of the building, setback, parking, the kind of landscaping that we'd like. Once we create the protocols for the public, for a developer, then a developer can come in and any developer can come in. And we do not necessarily have to limit this to the 10 acres that have been identified here. I mean, we have to decide what makes sense for this area. Do we own residential? The applicant proposes a single palette for the developers to follow. So we need to decide what that palette is. We have historic buildings in the area. We need to have more sufficient transparency and communication to the community. The other thing I want to mention here, and I want to be sure that you understand here that I do this without malice. The petition really is untimely at best, and it creates a clear and unambiguous appearance of conflict of interest, if not impropriety. I want to remind the commissioners of the petition that it's inconsistent with the spirit and perhaps the letter of section 32 of the town's code of ordinances regarding conflicts of interest and disclosures. The petition involves properties in which public officials appear to have a personal financial interest. Full written disclosures are required to be part of the record of this hearing and minutes. In addition, each public official is required to, quote, file a listing of real estate holdings, whether they have or have not, partially or partially owned, which are located within or partially within the town, and the identity of any business associations or interests that may impinge on town affairs within 30 days of appointment. Given that this petition raises potential for the appearance of, if not the actual conflict of interest, absolute transparency is even more important. It's incredibly important for public officials to be sure that when one of the affected parties here is a public official who's also running for public office in less than 30 days.
All right, wrap it up, John, because
I am wrapping it up. Excuse me. The specter of undue influence is raised here when any elected official, especially close to an election cycle,
you are way out of base.
This is about prudence, ladies and gentlemen, not politics. Newington wants to and needs a TOD. The proposal proposes to make people a lot of money. This should be tabled without prejudice.
John, can you answer a question for me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do I gather that you're not necessarily against the development, the redevelopment of the Dunkin' Donuts across the street, but you'd rather have a more complete TOD area on the other side of the street. Is that correct?
Yes, the entire parcel needs to be better defined, and on the specifications of the TOD needs to be better defined. I would point to things like the Elmwood Development District in West Hartford as a perfect example.
Well, we have a TOD regulations over on Fenn Road that we developed, but my understanding is you're not against the redevelopment of the Gibbs gas station.
No, not at all. And I think it's needed. I think it's desirable. That is an outstanding intersection for thoughtful development, as long as it doesn't impinge on the residents. And we need to find ways to do that appropriately. And I'm sure the commission is prepared to do that.
Thank you
but
very much.
Right now, this should be tabled.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your comments. Okay, the next public person is Caras, C-A-R-A-S. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak, Commissioner. And John, If this is a public meeting, which is the way it should be, I'd stand up and give you a standing ovation with a lot of clapping. So I share all his thoughts exactly.
Excuse me, if you could just state your full name and address for the record, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Cara Santoro, Francis Avenue, Newington.
Thank you.
My other question was, and John said it beautifully, but I'd like to know really how many residents are even on this call. The last couple of days, I spoke to many people in the neighborhood who had no clue this was going on, and they had no clue what was going to happen over there if it did go on. So I really think it should be tabled, and let's have an in-person meeting when the time is appropriate with everything that John mentioned. I agree that there were very few signs and that people really didn't know what was happening. And if we're talking about Dunkin' Donuts, and that makes sense, and it's good for Gibbs and all that, that's great. But I agree, the other side of Willard Avenue does not need to be included with this thing going on with Dunkin' Donuts. And then also in this, it talks about high density housing, which people have no idea what that means. Office rental, and I'm not sure to who, since a lot of businesses will probably stay with their people working at home. And 500 park. What 500 cars are going to park there, and who are going to own these cars? So is this development on the other side of Willard going to look just like the Berlin Turnpike? And what's not fair to us as homeowners, like John had mentioned, but also our property values. And someone also talked about, you know, the type of zoning that it's going to be. And if it's a non-conforming zone, and having worked in, you know, mortgage lending for 33 years, good luck for the people who are trying to buy the houses next door to it, which means that our property values would go down, and who's going to come in and scoop them up? People that want to do exactly what's going on here. And my last question is, the people on Spring Street, were they really approached to say this is what's going on? Or were they approached to say, hey, let us buy your houses too? Because I spoke to someone in that area that said that was what was done to them, that they were approached to sell their home, not necessarily make them aware of what's going on. So I think there's a lot of good information here that Rose gave, that Edward gave, that John gave. And I think that we definitely need an in-person meeting. And if it has to be tabled for months or a year, well, so be it. Let the Gibbs oil go through, but the rest of it, no, that needs to be tabled and have the public in person and properly notified. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak? I'll go to the applicant in case the applicant would like to address any of this.
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Again, it's Ken Slater. I would, start at the beginning, which is what was really critical to us was our development on the corner of West Hill and Willard to enable the Dunkin' Donuts to be a drive-through, and it enabled a substantial improvement to the Phillips 66 station. And I'm very thankful for Attorney Fury's comments about what a good job they did in the facility at Windsor Locks. We were happy to carry the water of trying to assemble other properties together to create what would be an opportunity for a developer to come in on the other side, on the east side. And I believe that that makes sense. You're the rule makers. You get to create. The word used was a palette earlier. There is a palette of a whole variety of uses that would be permissible on the POD on the other side of the street if you were to approve that. And you would have the discretion under the special permit rules to be able to assure that the development that goes in there are appropriate in the neighborhood. I don't represent those folks, though. I only represent Gibbs. And one thing I would ask that if the commission is troubled and thinks that there should be charrettes, because I didn't want to mislead the commissioner earlier, we did not hold charrettes with property owners that were not part of the proposed subdivision. So the condominium association, for example, they were correct. I didn't notify them. That notification process was by way of the ordinary regulations of putting signs up, of the notice. And the statutes don't even require signage, so your regs go above and beyond that, and worked with the planner in terms of where they would be located so that people would be put on notice of where the areas they were looking to be zoned. But there's no doubt that there was plenty of signage on the corner of West Hill and Willard, and there doesn't seem to be opposition to that component. So at very least, we'd like to see that as maybe your stepping stone for a larger zone, but we think there's plenty of support in your both your regulations and your plan of conservation and development to approve the entirety of the zone. And I think one of the reasons why you might not have a lot of people jumping up and down and being upset about this is because the rubber is really going to hit the road when actual development applications come in on that other side. But that it's pretty hard to argue that it would be better to maintain it in industrial zoning and right next to partial residential zoning. So that might be the reason why you're not hearing from a lot of folks, because this is a good idea, but the time to tell of exactly what the development will look like will be in the future. So we think that the whole application is supportable, but you certainly can split it and approve it in part. That is within your discretion if that was something that you were persuaded that by some of these remarks that the other side, the east side of Willard Ave, should be approached in a different way. We would certainly support it and participate if that's the commission's desire. We think the whole thing should be approved, but please at least help us out on the corner.
Thank you very much, Attorney. I'm going to go back to the public that anybody opposed to this, you have a final comment. If you'd like, if you have something else that you'd like to ask, another question, or you have another point, I'll give you another opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of emails and one letter to read at some point.
Okay, why don't you read those, Craig, and then we'll go to the public.
Okay. I received an email from Terry LePente Duffick and Mick Duffick. Dear Mr. Minor, I am opposed to petition 30-20 zone change along Willard Avenue. There are 3 historic houses located in this area, and it would be a shame to destroy them. In a time when most cities and towns are trying to preserve old structures, this would remove 3 or 4 lots from the R7 and R12 residential zone to a planned development zone. This zone change would also alter the character of the area. I have no issues with the gas station and the medical building being changed, but I think it is unacceptable to destroy old houses. Sincerely, Terry LePente Duffick, 7 Barkledge Drive, Newington. The next email I have is from Margaret Hart Bannock. Dear Mr. Minor, Dear Commissioners, I would like to propose that you notify residents within a 2-mile vicinity of proposed zoning changes of this magnitude by postcard rather than just by email and a newspaper ad. Everyone does not use email, and it unnecessarily excludes residents of governance participation. We do not all subscribe to newspaper or the one you chose to place a notice in. A zoning change is a matter of importance to property owners and warrants a mailing since we should be well aware of the suggested changes that impact our lives. I'm increasingly concerned about the town turning into a city. I moved from a city to live in a suburban town to get away from the noise, traffic, congestion, street litter, and other unpleasant surroundings. As it is now, the traffic, congestion, litter, and noise in Newington has increased exponentially in the last 10 years. I therefore submit my opposition to a change in zoning that would allow for 500 parking spaces and multiple dwelling apartments on Willard Avenue and throughout the town. Thank you for your consideration. Margaret Hart Bannock, and her address is 145 Star Avenue. And then I received a letter today, which I gave to James. He can display it. And I'll try to read it, but it's handwritten, and I'm not sure what some of the words are. I'll wait for James to put it up. Town of Newington Planning and Zoning Commission. I oppose zoning change to Willard Avenue fast track area. The meeting about this today, October 14, 2020, at 1900 hours, seems to be a, I'm not sure, rush or hash situation and should be more considerate to town and area residents. Many with and without computers have no idea about this matter. Signed, Rick Lewis, 189 Stoddard Avenue. And that's all I have, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. I will open it up to Rose Lyons now for her second comments. Go ahead, Rose.
keeps asking me to unmute. Have I unmuted myself
Yeah.
or? Okay.
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. With all due respect to Attorney Slater, he doesn't not know the history of that particular area there at Newington Junction. In the past, I've attended several meetings when the busway was being proposed. I was at meetings when they did the Newington Junction study, and the room was packed with people that were interested to find out what was going on in that area. And most of the people, I would venture a guess, would say were in opposition to what was proposed at the time. I'm not saying they would be opposed to what's being proposed right now, but including it in your application, I do not believe is fair to the residents of this town. I just think that the residents in the area need to have more information. If there's nothing imminent, if there's no application pending at this time, I don't see the rush. I heard the beginning of your presentation, but I wasn't quite clear. Was it the owners of the properties on the east side of Willard Avenue that approached you to join in on your application, or did you approach them to join in on your application? Again, thank you for your time, and I hope you can get your application put through, Mr. Slater, but I would hope that we hold off on the other side of the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. And if Attorney Slater, if at this time, if you could just answer that one question, I believe you approached the people, but if you could confirm that.
That's absolutely right. After we met with the Economic Development Director, Mr. Brasher, and Craig Minor, town planner, the suggestion was made to us that while it's a good idea to do what we're proposing on the west side, that the area that is a mix of industrial and business and residential near the Fast Track station on the other side, it would make sense to include have a larger zone area. So we approached them. I don't represent anyone within that on the east side. We approached them and said that this seems to make sense. If you agree, you consent to our filing an application that would include your land, and all of the persons that are owners of the land within the area shown agreed that it made sense, and we included it. So we approached them.
Thank you very much for clearing that up, Attorney Slater. And thank you, Rose, for that question. Edward, if you have something, go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Ed. Yes.
Yes. My question is, why is it such a mystery on who are the property owners on the east side of Willard Avenue that are going to have a financial interest in this development? I think the public should be informed of exactly who is going to have a financial interest of this development. And I think that it should also be tabled after the election and when we could have in-person meetings, because a lot of people don't have computers and need to speak their mind. These are our properties, we own them, and we don't want our property values influenced by hidden agendas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. And the last person, Kara's, you have the floor. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Cara Santor, 93 Francis Avenue. Thank you again for letting me speak. And I just wanted to say to Attorney Ken that what you did over there on the other corner that helped the people at Pro Health does look beautiful. The gas station, Dunkin' Donuts are already existing buildings, and to make them look more modern and have a drive-through, I'm sure that would look very beautiful like what you did. And I don't think too many people would be opposed to that, as it sounds like tonight. Stating again, I'm very opposed to the stuff on the other side. I agree with everyone that spoke before me that it should be tabled till whatever time it takes to get an in-person meeting. And I know that it sounds like the person that owns the stuff on the east side didn't approach them, but if Attorney Ken was sitting with Craig Minor and they're all in the same commission and planning and zoning or whatever it's called, I see that as a conflict of interest.
He's not on the planning and zoning anymore, ma'am.
I know, but he's,
Anyone that owns a property on the other side of the street is not on planning and zoning.
I
and
know that, but
this-
Craig
it was
Minor and all of
Let me
them,
just, it was suggested by Craig Minor
right,
to approach the residents on the other side, because if you just change, let me see if I can explain this for you, and Attorney Slater can confirm it or not. But if you just change a zone on the corner, then it's kind of like spot zoning if you don't have everything, if you don't include more. And they were looking for a way to get this Dunkin' Donuts developed. Am I correct, Attorney Slater?
Yes, the only part I would, the law on spot zoning has softened so that if there's a good, as long as the commission has a good reason that supports the community, that a smaller zone is appropriately approved. But it's definitely it's better to have a larger area like the one that we've proposed here. And
Yep.
It's hard to argue in my view, and I don't have any fish to fry over there. As I've said, I don't represent any clients over there, but it's pretty hard to look at the zone that's there and say that a PD zone wouldn't be an improvement on that.
Yep.
And if you could do something even more and you want to do something more detailed with some kind of an overlay in the future, you could do that as well. So, that's really the reason why it made sense to approach more property owners, and they supported it. So I hope.
Thank you, Attorney Slater.
Okay,
I cut you off, so I want to let you finish. Go right ahead.
okay, thank you. And thank you, attorney, for that. The only thing I'm coming up with is those are already existing buildings, and I'm not sure how the zoning change works. That's not my area of expertise. I'm just saying that obviously everybody knows everybody and suggests, why don't you go ask this person? It still remains a question to a lot of us that who owns it, what's the financial gain, and why can't they wait until we can be in person? This is a big thing. We don't want our neighborhood to look like the Berlin Turnpike. Marge spoke and talked about the traffic and the noise. And I think the most fair thing to do to everybody is to table that side of Willard Avenue until we can all be in person, however long it takes. And that's the most fair thing. I thought Marge had a very good suggestion to put out postcards and things like that, because a lot of people don't go on these meetings. They don't go on the internet. And I agree with her, we don't buy the newspaper. So there has to be a better way to get the word out, make it more fair to the people who live here. It's affecting our lives and our property values. And so I'm not opposed to the Dunkin' Donuts and the gas station. They're already existing. So if you want to go forward, I think that would look very nice when it's done, but I am totally opposed to the other side of Willard Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We know that side is a very a delicate area. Residents are very concerned. Craig, is it possible to split these two spots up?
Yes, as Attorney Slater told you, you have the ability with pretty much every application to either approve, deny, or approve with modifications. So if you wanted to approve it only on the west side, then yes, you could do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Craig. I appreciate that. We're going to go to commissioners' questions. I agree with some of the residents that we need more input on that area where on the east side there. But let me see if the commissioners have any questions. I think Commissioner Fox, you had your hand up.
Mr. Sobieski does at the moment, sir.
Okay. Okay, let's go to Commissioner Sobieski and then Commissioner Fox. Go ahead, Commissioner Sobieski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that the Dunkin' Donuts Phillips 66 gas station, I'd like to see that done. I think we should split them. The other side, I think we had to proceed a little more cautiously. I would like to see that area cleaned up where the gas station is with the car wash and stuff in the back. I think that would be a great addition to our tax base, and I am all for splitting it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't realize I was muted. But what I was saying, starting to say is, I definitely see a trend here in the way the residents are thinking around here, around this issue. After all, it's true. No, not very many people know about it, and I've been asking for some a delay until we can get person-to-person meetings. And it looks like I'm not the only one. I also agree with the fact that with the residents that the development that excuse me, Attorney Slater is actually involved in on the west side is a very good development. It'd be very good for the neighborhood. But I think somebody has already said until, I think it was Rose, until you actually have an applicant, a developer coming in on the east side there, I really think we should leave that alone, period. And again, we need a lot more input. Now, let me say just one thing. Mr. Shalansky, I think it was, mentioned that a certain public official and candidate owns, or he or his family own a number of properties over there. And I think that's what Carol was alluding to also. That official is not a TPZ member anymore, but I think it should be known, and it should possibly publicize his intentions. Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Fox, as Attorney Slater said, he went and approached all the property owners on his own. So it was not the other way around. So we'll go to Commissioner Claffey. Do you have a question?
I have a one question, two concerns. I feel, as I've been on this commission many years now, I feel that I can concur with representative representing the owner in Gibbs Oil that this has been around well before COVID. It was brought to the town, brought to economic development. I remember discussions about even when they changed to Pro Health about a Dunkin' Donuts and a drive-through. So I find it hard that this is new to any of the commissioners. Maybe new to some of the new commissioners. Secondly, I'm a little concerned. I do agree that I think it should be split, but my fear is if we split it, do we make anything on the west side more non-conforming if we were to change things? That's an answer that Mr. Minor can present to us, because I don't want to affect, 242, 256 West Hill, or the northwest corner, 121, 115 of Willard Ave. And as a commission, I'm kind of a little torn, because it seems that it's being politicized of somebody across the street who might have a vested interest. Guys, there's no need for that here. If someone has an issue, they can take it up with the town manager and the appropriate legal department, but this is the town planning and zoning. We don't look at who the owners are. We don't care. I personally don't care who the owners are of property. So let's bring it down a little bit out of just common professionalism and decency.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Let's see here. Is there any other commissioners that have, Commissioner Fox, you have another comment?
No, I was just forgot to lower my hand. Not now, anyway.
So, Craig, if we were to modify this petition 30-20 zone change, it would be from a BI to a PD at 129 Willard and 230 West Hill Road. And it would that would be it. Is that not correct?
It would be from, okay, both of those parcels are currently zoned B, so they would be changed to PD. Right.
So,
There's
so
no
it'd be B zone. So a zone change from B to PD at 129 Willard Avenue and 230 West Hill Road, Gibbs Oil Company, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other commissioners have, Commissioner Haggerty?
Can you hear me okay? I'm on a different mic here.
Yes, I can, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess my comment would be, I'm okay for splitting it. Like I think most people are. My only concern is, or statement that I would make is, I would not be in favor of tabling issues because we can't meet face to face. That's come up before, and it's for some reason it come up again tonight. This is the world that we live in, and this is how we conduct our business now. The rest of the town is conducting business this way. I don't think anything should be considered to be tabled simply because we are unable to meet face to face.
Thank you, Commissioner Haggerty. Yep. I agree. And do you have an opinion on, you don't mind the splitting of the two sides?
No, I mean, so it sounds like there's little opposition to any, for the west side. It sounds like there's some opposition to the east side, and that's okay. And people want to know more about it, and I have no problems with that. If we want to hold off on things on the east side until more people become informed and make informed decisions, that's okay. But the tabling indefinitely until COVID passes, I don't think is reasonable.
Thank you, Commissioner Haggerty. It might be handy for us to bring up the east side as a commission with proper notification to people, and do something similar to what we did over on Fenn Road, is come up with something and work with the residents over there, because they're the ones that have to live over there. And so we want it to blend in and not be obtrusive to them. So I think that should be done at a later date. And splitting these up, I think, would still provide the Gibbs Oil with a method to bring their development in. Commissioner Claffey, do you have a question?
It is the form of a question that wasn't answered by Mr. Minor, and I think he's getting to it, is that we don't make anything more. If we were to split this, and just deal with the west side, do we make it harder for any other residents to be non-conforming? I do take into consideration Ms. Santoro's comments earlier in the whole scheme of things of making it harder for business to be conducted, I guess, a way to say it, for residential, commercial, industrial, etc. So I'd like to get an answer from our planner. For the record.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Craig?
Commissioner, could you rephrase the question, because I don't understand?
The question is let's not worry about just look at that corner, the property 129, 234, 236, and 230, and just deal with that corner in the blue. If we were to make this change, does it affect anyone else on that corner, meaning like lot 256, 242, 121, or 150?
Right. Okay. No, it would not affect any of the abutting properties.
Okay. I just want to make sure that they're safe. I don't want to use the word safe, but safe with these changes that we may, put to a later date, etc. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes.
Mr. Sobieski has his hand up.
Okay, Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, Commissioner Payne. Excuse me. Might I suggest that in the future, and I'd like all the commissioners to weigh in on this, that what we do is send out postcards on any types of changes. It's cheaper than letters, like we did with the attempted realignment of Maple Avenue and Alumni Road. It's only a thought. I thought we would put out like 200 and some odd letters at that point. So I know it's cost. I'm trying to think of a way to save some money for the town without going into a lot of money. Thank you.
Commissioner Sobieski, I think you have an excellent point there. And that's why I think maybe on the east side there, that maybe the commission should take it up and we notify people ourselves and get their input to try to make that area a TOD area similar to the Fen Road, but working with the residents to come up with something that they can be proud of and live next to. And so I think separating these might be a wise thing to do. Are you in agreement to that, Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes, I told you earlier I was in agreement to splitting them. Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Woods.
can we hear from the planner
Certainly.
and
You have
what
a
his
question?
comments are? Well, yeah, I mean, he said he was going to reserve his comments until the applicant spoke, and the applicant has now spoken. I'd like to hear what his position is.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Craig, if you could.
Right, yep. Well, I think this would be an excellent change for Newington's economic base. But one of the residents made a good point that this would certainly increase traffic on Willard Avenue. She compared it to the Berlin Turnpike. That may be a bit of an exaggeration, but this would certainly increase the amount of traffic in that area. I was going to go back and look at go through the zone, I mean, the new POCD to see if there are any other issues in the plan of development that would either speak in favor of or against the change on the east side. But since that portion of the request doesn't seem to have a lot of support from the commission, there's probably no need for me to go into a lot of detail with that. But I would still like the commission to keep the hearing open so that I can, well, both prepare a motion to approve with reasons that you could then adopt at the next meeting, but also give some more thought to the implications of approving only part of this proposed change and not all of it, which you're allowed to, but I'd like to have the chance to think about what the unintended consequences might be.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman, on that?
Absolutely, Commissioner Woods. Go right ahead.
Craig, I'm assuming you're talking that the increase in traffic would be on the east side, not the west side. Is that correct?
Right.
And then the east side, we really can't even discuss the east side because there is no development. That's just a conceptual design. We really have no idea what anybody would do there. All we're really talking about is a zone change. And unfortunately, the way our regs are written kind of requires this conceptual plan that we don't even know is going to be realized at this point, correct?
Sure.
So, I mean, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here on looking at a 500 space parking lot, several buildings that don't exist. And the best of, I think all of our knowledge is right now, probably never will to that level.
Well, but that's one aspect of the zone change that's obvious. It's the ones that we haven't thought about tonight that is what's giving me pause. You know, the unintended consequences, the unanticipated consequences. So I'd like a couple weeks to think about it.
And I'm not saying we should close the hearing and move this forward. I think there is no desire to do anything on the east side right now. I think we do need to get actually, let me ask one more question of you. Was there proper notice given, as far as you are concerned, from this body, by the applicant to the abutting neighbors?
Yes, because we don't require notice to be sent to the abutting neighbors on a zone change. We do on special permits, but we don't on zone changes. And it's not uncommon for signs to disappear. I think the commissioners have all seen that. Somebody doesn't like a project, so they think if they steal the sign, it could sabotage it. But the signs were up at the right time, and that's really all you can require of the applicant.
Okay, and then just one last question, Mr. Chairman, then I'm done. Is there not, I thought there was a minimum when it came to a zone change, that we had to have a certain amount of acreage for a zone change, specifically in the PD zone.
Right. No, you're not. Yeah, the PD zone does require 1 acre lots. I think that's intended, though, when a new PD zone is being created wholesale and involving a subdivision of multiple PD lots. These lots already exist. I think if the commission wanted to use that as a basis to deny the zone change, because technically these lots aren't big enough, that would probably stand up in court. But I don't think you're bound by that unless you want to be.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods, and thank you, Craig. Commissioner Havens, do you have a question?
No, I did that by accident. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, if there's no other questions from the commissioners, I think it would be important to leave this public hearing open until our next meeting. Any comment?
No, we don't need a motion for that. We just leave it open, correct, Mr. Chairman?
We need to make a motion.
A motion to continue it would be.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue this public hearing 30-20 until our next scheduled planning and zoning meeting.
All right, a motion made by Commissioner Woods and seconded by
Claffey.
Commissioner Claffey, seconded. And any questions or comments from anybody? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we will continue that. I want to thank everybody and thank the applicant
Thank
and
you.
the public. Okay, the next thing on our petition 33-20 is a referral of proposed conservation and commission inland wetlands agency regulation amendment, Newington Conservation Commission applicant. Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, this is interesting. I've been here 8 years and I didn't know until a month or so ago that there's an ordinance in Newington that requires the Conservation Commission to refer any text amendments to TPZ for a comment. I don't know if any other town does that. It's certainly not a state statute. So the text amendment in question here is to add a definition of vernal pool to the wetlands regulations. And in my memo, I explained that vernal pools used to be considered unimportant because they dry up. So how important can a wetland be if it dries up every year? But it turns out that's exactly why they are extremely important. Because they dry up, fish can't survive there. And since there are no fish there, amphibians and other critters have a chance to spawn and as part of their life cycle. So vernal pools are really very important for the habitat because that's where amphibians breed. So what this amendment to the regs would do would create a definition of vernal pools and provide them with a little more protection than they currently get as being just another kind of wetland. So I certainly recommend that the commission
No.
favorably.
I have a couple of questions for you, Craig. Would this be on only in the wetlands area and the wetlands buffer, or does this relate to any land? How does this work?
Right. It would only be a wetland. It would not be in a buffer. It would be in the wetland itself.
It's only applying in the wetlands. So if somebody had a parcel of land, they couldn't, because it says here it's man-made or natural. And you know that there's property around that could be a 7-acre parcel or a 3-acre parcel. And if it was disturbed and man-made X amount of years ago, they're not claiming it's only in the wetlands area.
Well, yes, but you raise a good point, Chairman, and this is often a problem for property owners that over time, a man-made wetland becomes a wetland and then becomes under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. But that's already true. This creating a definition of vernal pools does not create the vernal pool. The vernal pool is already there or it isn't. This gives it more status and a better understanding of how it should be dealt with.
All right, I was just concerned that it didn't, no,
it's not like
disturb development.
No, it's not as if they're expanding the buffer from 100 feet to 200 feet or something like that.
Okay, all right, and there's only a couple of them known, I think, on town-owned land up on Cedar Mountain, I believe, right?
That I don't know, but however many there are known, I'm sure there are a lot that are not known, but but will be discovered as properties come in for development.
Okay. Any
Yeah.
questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Woods.
I actually have the same concerns as you do. I am not so concerned about a natural occurring vernal pool, but one probably manufactured through, in most cases, neglect on a piece of property. I think raises a lot of concerns for many pieces of property that we have left to be developed in the town. I'd also like to see if we could get this draft with the actual languages being changed, redlined, so that we can see, are they just adding 7.12, section 7.12?
I can speak to that, Mr. Payne, if you'd like.
Yes, why don't you give us an overview, Mr. Hinckley? I'd appreciate that.
Yes, what you see in red in the regs, all that stuff is getting added. Prior, they had no information about vernal pools. And your questions are legitimate. They're basically looking at parcels that are going to be developed or redeveloped, and the commission, as in other towns, because I believe they took these from Cromwell's regulations, they want to put the onus on the applicant to see if there are vernal pools on that property prior to development, and they would come under, the same type of regulation as a wetland. So to answer your question, yes, it could potentially impede some types of development going forward, but they, as the wetlands body, they want to protect what's there.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
if there's a piece, so I have the same concerns as Commissioner Woods. So if there's a piece of property out there that's 3 acres and it doesn't have any wetlands, but there was a man-made depression, they're gonna send somebody out there to inspect it and say that you have a man-made depression here, and over the last 20 years, you haven't been able to develop your property, but now we're going to consider this man-made depression wetlands, and we're going to prevent development. I have a big problem with that.
It also has a 100-foot buffer around it, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
No, I understand your concern, Mr. Payne. And again, yes, they want, because there's depression there, it doesn't mean it's a vernal pool. There are other things they look for to define the vernal pool, the obligate species, the newts, the salamanders, the fingernail clams, but yes, somebody's going to have to have that survey, so to speak, done. They could go out there and say, yeah, it's not a vernal pool. It's just a depression, and it goes forward.
Well, how do you explain the fact that Craig Minor said that it was only for the wetlands area? If it's been determined by the wetlands map that a piece of parcel doesn't have wetlands on it, then is there anything that's needed for that developer to move forward?
The commission is that they want that search done for a vernal pool. Yes, that they are going to want that.
This will put a burden on every property owner that's developing their land, that they're going to have to hire somebody to prove that there's no vernal pools.
Potentially.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns or questions from the other commissioners? Commissioner Claffey.
My concern gets back to like the LID. We got rid of that because it put undue costs associated with someone trying to just put a shed on their property.
Yeah.
So that's my concern. Here we are, all of a sudden there's this new vernal pool thing, and now we want to put undue costs associated with that onto somebody, unless it's left up to the town department to go out and check this piece of land. I mean, we already pay for that service, as I guess. I'm not for it, but I'm not an environmental guy. I just think we're going to keep putting more costs on developers and or homeowners, and they're not going to want to develop or redevelop.
I agree, Commissioner Claffey. We have a wetlands map that determines where the wetlands are. So I think this might be going to the extreme. Commissioner Fox, do you have something?
No.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Would the commissioners like to have the Wetlands Commission come in and at our next meeting so that we could discuss this further? And maybe Commissioner Woods, we could explain to them our concerns and see if there's something that could be worked out that still protects the vernal pools, but doesn't deter development.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Craig, is that possible? And Mr. Hinckley, is that possible?
Sure, it'll be possible. Just so you know, they are having their public hearing on those regulations is scheduled for November 3rd. And the regulations have also been sent as required by statute to DEP for their review. I have not got any comment back from them as of yet. And as you know, you guys can make comments to the proposed changes. And, yes, you could probably discuss them prior with the chairman.
What's the procedure after DEEP has been notified? If you could go through the
DEEP gets
procedure.
notified, they respond. You would respond as well with comments, and they're given to the commission. They can choose to make those changes or not. And then after the commission approves their regulations, they also the wetland regs have to go to town council to get approved at the council level. So wetlands could go through all the hoops and council could deny it, deny those changes. Ultimately.
And do we have a time limit that we're supposed to respond to by?
Like I said, our public hearing is November 3rd. I think I sent these regulations to Craig a couple weeks ago. So,
okay. So our next meeting, we have plenty of time then.
Okay. Yep.
Craig, is that all right to get that on the agenda to have somebody from Wetlands come in and explain a little bit more of this?
Right. I can discuss it with Eric tomorrow and work out the details of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. If there's no other questions from the commissioners, we'll move to old business. We have petition 26-18 site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, Cedar Point, in accordance with CGS section 830G, Dakota Partners Incorporated, applicant Stop and Shop Supermarket Company LLC, owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact. Craig, if you could give us an update on this.
Yes, as I think most commissioners know, and as was mentioned in my memo, when the denial of the project was appealed to the courts, the Judge Modelis, agreed in principle with the commission that this would be unsafe without a sidewalk. So the judge ruled that Dakota had to go back to DOT in good faith and try to get DOT to agree to a sidewalk. They did that. They came to an agreement, but now it's come to the town manager's attention that, in his opinion, and I understand his feelings, that a sidewalk right next to a busy street with very little space between the sidewalk and the westbound traffic would not be safe. And so the town manager very strongly feels that we should not take the sidewalk. Well, my feeling is that if not the sidewalk, then what can we get that would, in a different way, provide for the safety of the residents? And one possibility would be to get a bus route, a CT Transit bus route, that would be a loop that would carry passengers from Cedar Point to the CT Fast Track station, and then there is currently a bus route on CCSU that toggles back and forth between the what's the station, the East Street station in New Britain and the Myra Cohen Way CT Fast Track station. Perhaps that DOT could be convinced to change the route to incorporate Cedar Point, which would then provide a safe means for the public to get to CT Fast Track. So I would like to see the commission use its leverage with the applicants to to have them approach DOT and try to get them to agree, to get DOT to agree to change the bus route so that there would be a safe way for these residents to get to CT Fast Track instead of having to spend $250,000 for a sidewalk.
Commissioner Claffey, you have a question?
Yeah, one question. I might have multiples after people discuss it more, but it was my understanding that the applicant did what the judge had ordered in their findings and asked them to, with due diligence and good faith, try to get a sidewalk in there. That being said, it was not able to be put together and now comes back to us. And it's hard for me now to swallow that we as TPZ possibly would want to go back at this developer and ask for more things. Like, when does it stop, guys? The developer did what they asked. The town has come in and put their foot in it more and more and more. The sidewalk, per everyone's appointment and agreement, would be unsafe. Why are we stirring the pot here with wanting to go back to them time and time and time again? If a court order isn't good enough, then why are we all here in the TPZ? We denied it. It got overturned. Let's move on.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairman Payne, at some point, I would like to address Commissioner Claffey's comments at some point.
Yeah. Any other commissioners have any comments?
Mr. Sobieski does.
Commissioner Sobieski, go right ahead.
First of all, there is a bus stop right now. It's bus 144. It originates down on in Weathersfield by the old Stop and Shop, comes down through the center of town. There is a bus stop right now at Maple Hill Avenue and Cedar. That could be moved this towards the west and put down in front of the Cedar Point. So I don't know if the DOT would consider moving it, putting a second route in there. And that bus runs every 15 minutes, I believe, from 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 or 8 at night.
Thank you. Commissioner Woods? Oh, no, Commissioner Sobieski, go right ahead.
Yeah. With regard to the sidewalk, and I don't want to debate this too much more because I'm getting tired of it, but I'm looking at the regulations here. I'm a little confused. So maybe somebody in here, maybe the town planner minor can explain something to me. All right. One 7.4.9, it says sidewalks. If there's no sidewalks within 500 feet, then we don't need to put money into an account. Am I correct? And if so, then we do have sidewalks within 500 feet. So the money that maybe we should, that 260 or 240 or 210, whatever it is, should maybe be put into an account and left there so that we could repair sidewalks, or at some point, and again, I'm looking at the 2030 plan here that says that that's a priority. I think it's on page, hold on for a minute, page 79, to extend the sidewalks from what appears to be Old Farms 1 to Old Farms 2. Okay, I believe Glenn can address that. And then they have two inner circles that are considered core area walk radius. And that goes all the way down to Fast Track. So at some point in time, somebody's going to have to put sidewalks in. I don't know who's going to do that. But I'm just a little confused with all these. I'm looking at all these things here, and there's one says one thing, one says another thing. In my opinion, I'd like to see the 200 and whatever a dollar amount put into an account. All right. And as far as putting sidewalks in, I think you need a sidewalk from Alumni down to there, or else get the DOT to move the bus stop. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. When I had spoken with the town manager, he told me he was going to make arrangements for DOT and for a loop bus to get in there to the property. So I think that'll be taken care of. As far as having money held for other sidewalks, I don't think we have any legal means to do that right now. I don't believe. And well, Commissioner Woods and then Commissioner Claffey, you had questions, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sidewalk issue, I believe, if I've got this correct, Dakota Partners did exactly what the judge asked them to do, is work with DOT. Actually, they did work out a plan to get a sidewalk from Cedar Point down to the busway. And the town manager then stepped in and deemed it unsafe and didn't want it. So they did exactly what the judge asked them and what we had looked for, is to get that sidewalk in. Unfortunately, I'm disappointed, and I'm not trying to second guess the town manager. He's in charge of public safety, and that's his job. If he deems that it's unsafe to have people walk on that road, I'll take him at his word. Hopefully we can get that bus stop there, so at least the people that do live in that development will be able to get a bus and get transported down to the busway safely, because they are walking there now, even without the development. I'm sure they're going to continue to walk. I would think they will probably still continue to walk after the development is built, because some people aren't going to want to pay for that additional bus fare. But I think the developer's done everything that we've asked of them. I'm disappointed that it didn't work out, but we are where we are. This is where I guess I agree with Commissioner Claffey. We need to move on. If they can get that sidewalk in the back, that's going to cost them some considerable dollars. If in fact they can work that out, although it didn't look like the attorney for the applicant thought that would be too successful, but maybe it will be, so that there will at least be some sort of point of connection, pedestrian wise, to get from that development to Alumni Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Claffey?
Yes, I want to also talk that this commission recently has taken out the sidewalk requirements on a few subdivisions in our town for reasons of, being a dead end street, etc. So I want that to be remembered. And also, we have to look at this applicant as the previous POCD, not the new POCD that we just approved like a month and a half or 2 months ago or less. So we kind of have no leg to stand on with the sidewalk as a commission when we reject sidewalks in subdivisions. I remember 3 that we've rejected in the last 6 months. So, we got to look at this as when the date came in for Dakota was like 2 years ago. So you got to think back of then on our decisions and not now, of how we've been acting, because we've kind of pushed sidewalks aside as a commission. So you can't now come back and say, oh, we want sidewalk here from 2 years ago of when an applicant was made. So I'm done. We need to move forward.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Commissioner Fox? Commissioner Fox, you had your hand up?
Commissioner Gill is looking to speak.
Commissioner Gill, go right ahead.
Yes, as far as this building is not a cul-de-sac and it's not a dead-end street, I feel that we should be pushing towards getting the rear pedestrian way and not putting leverage on them. Just ask them if they are willing to go in that direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Gill. I think the grades are very difficult in the back, and I think that's why they're having such a problem with that back there and getting permission from property owners, which makes it very difficult. Commissioner Lenars, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to chime in on a couple opinions that I have concerning this. I don't have a lot of the experience that you guys obviously had, because I wasn't on the board when this came about. Just looking at what I'm looking at now, I think the town manager's opinion of having the safety obviously be first and foremost considered with the sidewalks is important. But once again, I think the opportunity for the people of this particular area should also be considered. And what I mean by opportunity is they should have some sort of opportunity to travel, whether it be through bus or whether it be through a rear sidewalk. I don't have the answers, but I think all of those being considered, moving the bus route or having the bus come through there often during the day, but just the opportunity for the residents to have should be just as important as the safety for them to be traveling to other parts of the parcel or town.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenars. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, Commissioner Fox.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep muting myself. At any rate, looking at the sidewalk proposed in the rear, as you just said, Mr. Chairman, the grades there are horrendous, number one. I really don't know what good a pedestrian walk back there would do. Once you get out to Alumni Road, whether you need to go to the VA or if you want to go back west to south to Cedar Street and the convenience store or the Dunkin', you have no sidewalks there either. And so if it's not very safe in itself. You mentioned that there no legal standing to, shall I say, put the money that they're going to put for the sidewalks into escrow. But I like the idea of looking. I mean, this is a high priority. I like the idea of possibly looking, searching for another community connectivity grant. And so if we can figure out some way to do that, then the state would pay for it. And in the meantime, it is unsafe. They're going to be walking there anyway. But I don't know. I'm not sure, but there should be an engineer somewhere, that could design and build a fence, some kind of barricade. Yeah. Other than that, that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Haggerty and then Commissioner Lenars. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also not on the commission when this was all taking part in the past couple of years. Correct that this commission really no longer has any purview or jurisdiction to dictate anything to Dakota. Is that correct?
I believe so. Craig can answer that.
I would disagree. The judge, to put it bluntly, the judge ordered Dakota to give us a sidewalk. So they have to give us a sidewalk unless we choose to alleviate them of that requirement. But they're required to give us a sidewalk.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
They were required to attempt to negotiate for the sidewalk, which they did do in good faith. And the town manager, who's in charge of public safety, is recommending to this board not to put that sidewalk in. Commissioner Lenars, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just while we're on the subject, and I don't mean to elongate this conversation any more than it already has, but when we talked about developments that have been coming before us, whether it be through safety or whether it be through non-traveled roads like a cul-de-sac where sidewalks are taken out, just so I can get my 2 cents on the record, I am totally against having any sort of funds being created to charge these developers in lieu of putting sidewalks in to take this money and keep it in escrow. It's nothing more than a tax towards the developer that he doesn't have to do. And I would just be cautious of that. I don't know the legal ramifications of that. I just would be cautious in order to do something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have a question or comment?
Sorry, Mr.
Go ahead, Commissioner Haggerty.
Not to like put, it seems as like one of a reason why this application was initially denied was its central location and lack of safe pedestrian travel. Is that a fair, broad, general statement?
Why it was denied?
Yeah.
I think it was denied
No, I
because
mean-
they didn't.
I mean, again, I don't want to. But I guess making that assumption that it was one of the reasons why this application was denied initially by this commission was lack of safe pedestrian travel, and the judge overturned it or said at least make a good faith effort, and they made a good faith effort, and we came back and said no. So I guess I'm with Commissioner Claffey. What are we still talking about?
The applicant by law is only required to put a sidewalk on front of his own property.
Yeah.
He legally he can attempt to try to get sidewalk on somebody else's property, but if he can't, you can't you can't use that to deny the project. I think that he has full approval here, and we need to move forward and have him bring the Mylar in and get this project started. It's been found that the town manager would prefer that sidewalk not to be built, and I myself think that we should adhere to his recommendations. If there's no other comments, I'd like to do a roll call vote on whether or not we're just going to move this forward and have him bring the Mylar in and get this project going. I think we're pretty much done with this. Commissioner Claffey.
Do we have to make a motion to move this forward before you take a roll call vote?
Petition. I would like to see a motion that we close petition 2618 and suggest to the Dakota partners that the sidewalk is not necessary. It's been determined that a public safety officer would not want that sidewalk put in. We appreciate them attempting to get it in. They can bring the Mylar in and get it signed and move on with this project. I don't think we have anything else to hold on. They have an approved site plan, I think, in the opinion of the town attorney. So I thought we'd do a motion on it and call for a roll call vote.
Okay, I make a motion that we move forward petition 26-18 for the site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, also known as Cedar Point. Sidewalk requirement determined by the town manager, our public safety officer, is that it not be put in down to the corner of Fen Road and Cedar Street. And we move this site plan approval to the next step.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second, Commissioner Havens.
Thank you, Commissioner Havens. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we just add to that motion for the record that it's based on the recommendations of the town manager? I think that needs to be part of it.
Okay.
I will modify my motion that it is based on the recommendation from the town manager, our public safety director, and not the recommendation of the town planning and zoning commission.
Okay, I'm
Thank
good
you.
with that.
Thank you. And is that all right with the seconder?
That is acceptable.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Craig, could you do a roll call vote, please?
You're muted, Mr. Minor.
Sorry, I thought I already had. I'm very sorry. Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Commissioner Gill,
Yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Chairman Payne.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Motion passes unanimously. Very good.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman?
Yes,
Can I-
Commissioner.
A point of record here. I understand that he's asking everybody, but it's really just the 7 commissioners that should be voting on this, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. I'm sure that's what the minutes should show.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the town planners report.
No, I think we have a petition for a public hearing.
Oh, for scheduling?
Yeah, the zoning text amendment.
Yeah.
35-20.
Yes.
Yeah, can we hold off on this? I think that we have our new zoning, our new planner coming in, and we'll set it up at a later date.
Okay, understood, Mr. Chairman. I'll explain that to the applicant.
Okay. And now we'll go to the town planner's report.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me make my notes here. Okay, yes, in my report. Okay, 2 items. The first is I drafted a fee in lieu of sidewalk text amendment as the commission as the commission discussed at the last meeting. I drafted it the way I thought it should read. I made some assumptions. I think I threw in a, James, could you go to the draft amendment itself? Yep, scroll down. Yeah, scroll past all the deletions to the new text. Okay, thank you. Yep. Okay, so what I'm proposing is that any multifamily, institutional, or commercial development in any of the business zones that does not currently have sidewalks shall show sidewalks on the site plan. James, can you scroll down a little more? Thanks. But the fee in lieu of sidewalk that would otherwise be required may be approved by TPZ under the following circumstances. A, that there's no sidewalk within 500 feet, and that's an arbitrary number on my part. B, that the property is not adjacent to a high, medium, or low priority future sidewalk as shown in the POCD. And finally, that the amount of the fee shall be 75% of the cost of the sidewalks as estimated by the town engineer, because somebody at the meeting last month felt that the fee should only be a fraction of the cost and not the full amount. So those are my proposals.
Thank you very much, Craig. I appreciate that. I think that this could be valuable for the commission to talk about at a later date. And if you could make sure that you have it out there for the new planner coming in. I'll open this up to commissioners' comments. Anything else you have, Craig?
Not on the sidewalk item, but then I believe I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, and then I think I gave you an update on the status of the bonds, but no action is needed on any of them.
Okay.
All right, so that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And under communications, we have a draft affordable housing plan. If either you, Craig, or Commissioner Woods would like to initiate that.
Mr. Payne, or Chairman Payne, Glenn Chalder is in the audience.
Oh, okay.
To this, and he prepared a PowerPoint presentation on it.
Okay. Hi, Glenn.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm pleased to be before you tonight. I've missed you since the POCD. But over the last couple of months, I've been working with the Housing Needs Study Committee in the preparation of an affordable housing plan. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. There's a new requirement in the state statutes that requires that every municipality in Connecticut has to prepare an affordable housing plan by June of 2022. The plan shall specify how the municipality intends to increase the number of affordable housing developments in the community. And this was recognized in the POCD. It was actually an action step in there. The Housing Needs Study Committee undertook the assignment of preparing this plan. And the Housing Needs Study Committee consists of 2 members of the Town Council, Carol Anest and Mike Camillo, Steve Woods from the Planning and Zoning Commission, William Hall from Interfaith Housing, and Maureen Lynch from the Commission on the Aging and Disabled. And Craig and I provided support to the Housing Needs Study Committee overall. I think just some quick facts so we get our terminology straight here as we go. Affordable housing means housing that's affordable to people who earn 80% of the area median income and they spend no more than 30% of their income on housing. So at that point in time, this becomes a mathematical equation. The information about area median income is based on the number of people in the household. As you can see from the table on the bottom of the slide, that ranges from $55,000 per year for a 1-person household up to $85,000 a year for a 5-person household. And again, that's 80% of the area median income. So those numbers roughly translate to the following. So a 1-person household is assumed to occupy a studio or 1-bedroom apartment, 2-person, a 1-bedroom, 3 people, a 2-bedroom, etc. And if you take 80% of the income and 30% going to housing and look at it on a monthly basis, the rents go between roughly $1,370 and about over $2,000 a month for different sizes of apartments. And the sale prices range from about $150,000 up to about $197,000. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about affordable housing. So I think that gives us a foundation here overall. And as part of our study, there were a number of findings. I recognize the hour's a little late, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. But about 2/3 of the housing units in Newington are single family. About 1/3 is multifamily or other types of housing. More than half the housing units in Newington were built before 1970. As an inner ring suburb, Newington grew during that time period. But also the houses that were built reflect sort of housing needs and desires at those times overall. In terms of occupancy characteristics, our population is projected to increase, so we may need more housing units for that. Household sizes are getting smaller, so we may need more housing units for that. And the age composition of the community is changing, and so people may be looking for different types of housing. And so that's sort of the occupancy characteristics. Next slide, if you would, James. As we look at the housing prices in Newington, sale prices of housing are more affordable than in some nearby communities, but actually in terms of rental rates, apartments in Newington are renting at values higher than they are in surrounding communities. And that's a reflection of the amenities in town, et cetera. In terms of affordability, the interesting thing we learned is that there are thousands of housing units in Newington which are affordable to households earning 80% or less of the area median income. And there are thousands of housing units in Newington that rent at prices that also make them affordable. In fact, it's estimated over 5,000 units in town are naturally affordable. But even so, there's approximately 3,500 Newington households that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. 42% of all renter households pay more than the 30% on housing. 28% of all owner households with mortgages, and 19% of all owner households with no mortgages. And those are households really that are just basically paying taxes, insurance, and utilities and other things like that. And the interesting thing is that most of the households that are challenged are elderly owners and renters who are living on moderate or modest incomes in many situations. sometimes people are living longer than their savings or their Social Security is going to support. And so it's a challenge for them and also for lower income owners and renters. Just as a quick aside, there's about a 2-year waiting period for housing authority units for the elderly people. So if you had a parent or a friend who needed an elderly income, lower income unit today, and you contacted the housing authority, that person's probably going to have to wait 2 years. Even though they need the unit today, they're going to have to wait 2 years to get there. So even though we have thousands of units that are naturally affordable in Newington, we have about 1,155 units that meet the state definition of affordable housing units. So when we talk about the 10% affordable housing goal in town and across the state, Newington is at 8.9%. We're not exempt and we don't get any credit for the naturally occurring affordable housing units.
Greg, Glenn, if I could interrupt you, I'm sorry. What is the required amount to meet the 10%, that number?
I believe it's, I had that in the report.
1301 at the moment. 1301.
Is what we
Thank
need.
you.
That's what we need, correct?
Correct.
Yep. And
Yeah.
is there some, did somewhere in here, did you put the properties that are been approved, like Dakota, and we have some new building at Veterans, and there might be one other ones. Do we have that where these are potentially coming over the next year or year and a half as these properties get developed? And where does that take us?
That will take us, we believe, close to or over, depending on the timing. We have two challenges, Mr. Chairman. Well, the one major challenge, which is that when the 2020 census results are released, the number of housing units in Newington will increase from what it was in 2010, and that's the denominator in the calculation. So our affordable housing percentage will go down. If we were to build no more units, we're going to fall from 8.9% to a lower number.
No, I understand we have to continue to keep it, but in all, we do pretty well compared to a lot of other towns. And the town is, as you say, is naturally affordable in a lot of instances. We have a lot of naturally affordable properties. My concern is that, we could be very close to the 10% with this future development. And I'm not saying to stop, but for us to put a requirement for all future development to be required to put 10%, I think that would stifle development. And I don't think that's what this housing plan should be presenting. I don't want to deter development. So that's one of my biggest concerns.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next slide, James, if you would. Just in terms of some other findings from our work so far, there was a survey that was done for the Housing Needs Study Committee in the last 4 or 5 years. And there are a number of people in Newington who are looking at options in terms of aging in place in their current housing units. This is actually a good strategy for the town to try to consider. The reason being is we do have a 2-year waiting period for people to get into housing authority units. And if we can keep them in their current homes and support them in terms of social services and tax relief and other things, it takes some of the burden off. And again, 80% AARP finds that 80% of people would prefer to age in place in their current homes. So that's certainly a good strategy for us. We are predominantly developed, so in terms of addressing housing needs, we're going to have to be a little bit creative in the future here overall. And we already have some regulations that provide for that. So the next section of the report outlined the strategies that the Housing Needs Study Committee is recommending for consideration as we move forward. The first strategy, the number one strategy really, is to encourage housing that meets community goals. The commission recently worked on the plan of conservation and development. There were recommendations in there about development of mixed use nodes in Newington with a sense of place, the town center, the transit village, West Cedar Street, Newington Junction. And these are places where we could incorporate and accommodate additional housing, et cetera, in the future. The plan also talked about encouraging redevelopment in the Berlin Turnpike, either in the PD district or the Berlin Turnpike district. Also possibility of Town Center East, design guidelines and other goals to make sure that development fits into the character of the community. This approach, actually of promoting development, Mr. Chairman, would be a way for us to kind of address diverse housing needs going forward and make sure that we're able to meet housing needs in the community. We did talk about the concept of earning an exemption from 830G, and the feedback from the committee was that that should not be a focus of our work, but a byproduct of our work. So in terms of addressing housing needs, and as you pointed out, in terms of the Dakota project and Victory Gardens and other projects in town, we're going to talk in a little bit about the Housing Authority's ability to build additional units there that would earn us an exemption from 830G because we're meeting the housing needs in the community the way that we want overall. The next strategy that the committee talked about is that rather than just, building more housing, but not having it necessarily address the housing needs of the community, that one of the things that the statutes authorize and allow communities to do is to adopt inclusionary zoning provisions. And this might be a requirement that every development needs to make some provision for affordable housing in the community, rather than cherry pick the best housing units or whatever and ignore the other situations. That the regulations could incorporate provisions to require affordable units or payment of a fee in lieu of affordable housing, much like you were talking earlier in this meeting about sidewalks, et cetera, an inclusionary zoning fee, or allowing an existing unit to be deed restricted as an affordable unit. The third major area of discussion was, again, the housing needs of an aging population. We're facing a situation in Newington and other towns around the state too, where the baby boomers and other people are aging and getting older. Their people are living longer than they ever did before. And so the question ends up being, how do we address the housing needs in this type of situation? We certainly have a situation with the Housing Authority where the plan recommends increasing the number of low-income elderly units. When the units were built, most of them in the 60s and 70s, they were dedicated to the elderly. But what's happened over the years now is that the requirements are that disabled people, physically disabled or mentally disabled, challenged, can occupy those units. And occupancy in many housing authorities is approximately 50-50 now. So we've actually lost elderly units over the last 50 years as our population of elderly people is growing. So one of the key recommendations in the plan is to try to invigorate the housing authority to move ahead in this area. For people that are choosing to age in place in Newington, people who have lived there for perhaps decades, continue to offer tax relief, perhaps find ways that they can adapt or accommodate their unit. If some people lose the ability to climb stairs in their house, and so now their house is really sort of no longer functional for them, to facilitate one-story additions that might allow for a first floor master bedroom or bathroom, maybe accessory apartments within an owner-occupied house, temporary healthcare units, maintaining social services and other things like that. And again, this is meant to keep and allow people to stay in their current homes. One of the other things we talked about was the concept of other housing configurations. There's been a movement around the country where they've talked about the fact that most development that goes on in communities tends to be single-family detached homes in a subdivision, for example, that you were talking about, the commission was talking about earlier this evening. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have, multifamily projects, which are dozen or scores of units. But actually, historically, there's been a lot of examples in West Hartford, in Newington, and other places of smaller micro developments, could be duplexes or triplexes, what are called courtyard apartments, and other types of development that are smaller projects that could fit into the Newington Junction area or other areas and provide for affordable housing options, whether they're deed restricted or they're just excuse me, naturally affordable. And so this is an area of growing interest, and the Affordable Housing Plan recommends we explore the possibility of enabling certain housing types in and near the mixed-use nodes, not everywhere in Newington, but really in areas near the town center, near the transit village, Cedar Street, Newington Junction, to look at the opportunities that might exist to incorporate alternative types of housing that could help meet people's different housing needs. There are some special housing needs in Newington overall. First of which is transient lodging. We have had situations along the Berlin Turnpike where historic hotel, motel, lodging facilities are being occupied for residential purposes. And part of the issue that comes along with that is social and criminal activity that is sometimes associated with that. The town has established a working group that's addressing this situation, not as quickly as they would like, but COVID has really kind of put a crimp in this type of situation as well. So we have a working group in Newington. I think our long-term goal might be to encourage redevelopment of these parcels so that they're no longer lodging facilities used as residences, but also there's a social need there as well. We did look at the situation in terms of homeless emergency shelters, and Newington has access to homeless and emergency shelters in surrounding communities. So there's no additional needs there in terms of that type of housing. Newington is fortunate to have a very diverse housing stock, which is naturally affordable. There's not much that you can't regulate that housing be affordable and stay affordable. It's going to adjust to the market. But I think having a naturally occurring affordable housing stock has allowed Newington to attract tenants with rental assistance vouchers and homeowners with mortgage assistance projects, which has allowed us to accumulate almost 600 units of points to the Affordable Housing Appeals List. So it's quite significant. We wouldn't be at 8.9% today if we didn't have a naturally occurring affordable stock that people show up and occupy housing units because of they're able to buy them at affordable prices or rent them at affordable prices. And that's, again, a credit overall. Finally, in terms of, well, not finally, actually, there's a couple more slides, but in terms of other housing issues, the Housing Authority right now, the housing plan recommends we look at ways to increase the number of elderly housing units and family housing units if possible. The Housing Authority is basically part-time and they really don't have the staff to do much more than what they're doing today. So if we're really going to start to address these issues with the Housing Authority, they're going to need some additional resources, either in terms of time, more time, because the people are part-time today, perhaps go to full-time, some additional assistance. There's some technical issues for the town in terms of a model housing affordability plan to manage what could be deed restricted units in the future that might come along, and make sure that they're all dealing with the same standards and criteria. Having a housing affordability administrator. Newington has one deed restricted project today, and Craig has handled the administration of that in terms of unit sales or new occupants coming in. But if we were to get more projects in town, the question is who's going to do that? And so that might be something to consider in the future. Establishing a housing trust fund. A number of communities have found ways to get grants and funds put aside that goes into a housing trust fund, much as, again, you were talking about earlier in the meeting in terms of sidewalks and other things, that this is money that would be available to support housing initiatives in the community. And so the housing plan recommends that. Parking requirements in terms of residential uses, there might be some modifications that could be addressed. In the site plan you saw tonight for Newington Junction, they talked about the possibility, I think it was 66,000 square feet of business and forget exactly how many residential units, but 500 parking spaces. And the entire site was sort of consumed with parking overall. When you're next to a transit facility, you probably don't need that many parking spaces, and that many parking spaces takes away from the possibility for business development to enhance the tax base or residential development to enhance the tax base, et cetera. So I think taking a look at our parking standards might be a good strategy in the long run. And then also, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think our parking regulations aren't bad. I think that was a bad design. It was just a mock-up design to show something. So it's a poor example, I think, to use. He just put that together. The attorney put it together to show an example.
Understood.
And it was a poor example for a TOD area.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be critical in that regard. I think that there are situations because of transit and Uber, Lyft, and a lot of other things that are going on these days that the parking standards in Newington probably could use another look. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is to implement the affordable housing plan. It is a requirement of the statutes that the plan be updated every 5 years as we go forward. So if you think about how often we update the POCD once every 10 years, this plan needs to be updated every 5. So the commission is also aware there's a proposal going into the legislature in the next session starting in January of 2021, which is probably going to be heavily laden with housing related activities. So I don't know what the long-term implications are for these affordable housing plans, but I think it is going to be an increasing area of attention at the state level, and I just wanted you to be aware of that. So this is the draft of the affordable housing plan, and we're here because we're looking for your comments and feedback in terms of directions and strategies for the town to consider from here.
Thank you. I'll open it up to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners have any comments? I certainly, when we started this, this came to town planning and zoning to have this subcommittee with the people on there. Now it seems to be going to the council. I'm a little concerned because there's a tremendous amount of zoning matter in here. And I frankly need a little bit more time to read this and so that I could respond to some of these zoning matters. And also I'll open it up to the commission, whether or not you want to give up this and let the council be adopting this, or whether or not you want to keep it in your hands. And I'll go to Commissioner Woods.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we spoke earlier, this is a draft. And by no means is, the Newington Affordable Housing Plan trying to step in front of planning and zoning. Anything that is in there is purely a suggestion. And again, open right now for your review. And I do think that we need to take some time and review this as a commission and get back to the housing study so that they can move forward for it. I get the reason we discussed it, that it should go back to the council, as the council is actually the one that is paying for it through a state grant. They actually are the ones that asked for it. I did represent our body on it. I think it's a well thought out plan. We didn't agree on everything, but in the end, we did get a document that I think works really, really well for the town. And I do understand that it does still require some tweaks. That's why it's in front of you. That's why we took it to the Newington Housing Authority, and it's going in front of several other boards and commissions prior to us finalizing it and bringing it to the council. We don't want to bring it to the council until we know that we have a document that everybody is happy with, and that obviously includes this commission. And we do have a big piece of work to take care of in there. But again, just because it's suggesting that we do some of these things doesn't necessarily mean that in the end, we can do them all in all the places that we might necessarily like to see them.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Thank you. Commissioner Claffey?
I think it'd be good to keep it open and so that everyone can review it. I don't know the time frame. I think definitely all the commissioners and the people that need to look at this need to digest it a little bit. It's kind of like almost like a review of a POCD, no pun intended. But there are some things that we need to hash out, just as a commission of what we feel. And maybe at the next meeting, we all come back with a few concerns or questions and present them as a committee and discuss them a little further. And also we have a new planner coming in that I would love for them to review it also. So I'd like to keep it open and just dive into it a little deeper. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. I think that's a good suggestion. Glenn, how much time do we have on this? I thought that it's not due for another year or something. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think as Mr. Woods indicated, that we've been working on this to get strategies. We've put together the preliminary concepts, which you see in this report. We're now in the process of sharing this with our other groups in town to get your feedback so that it becomes a document which reflects the desires of the community. Craig has already met with the Housing Authority to kind of get their thoughts. We've shared it back with the municipal departments that gave us input through this process. We're due to go to the town council for an informational meeting on their meeting, which I think is Tuesday, the 27th, which is one night, I believe, before your next meeting. But we're not there for any official action. We're just there to inform them of the status of this report. We're looking for your comments and feedback, their comments and feedback. Then I believe the committee will continue to talk this over and make additional refinements, and eventually, put it forward for consideration for adoption.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate that. I think we'll probably keep this open several meetings. I'd like to have the commission talk about it and have the new planner review it. So it may take 2 or 3 meetings, but we'll get right on top of it and have it at each of our meetings. I'll open it up to Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to hold on to this and read it further. I noticed that Glenn had highlighted different transitional housing. I'd like to read into that a little more. Talk about that in the next couple of meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox, very much. Commissioner Lenars?
Yes, I just echoing everyone else's thoughts that I didn't really realize that the plan that they put together here had so much specifics in terms of TPZ matters. So I think by leaving it open and giving us a little bit more time to soak it in, read it over, it looks great. Initially, a lot of good things, and there's a lot of things that maybe I want to read into a little further and learn more about. So I would be in favor of keeping this open, looking at it, and obviously discussing it with our board with the specifics of the TPZ obviously at hand.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenars.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner
yes.
Sobieski has his hand raised.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes, Glenn, I think you did a fantastic job on this, you and Commissioner Woods. I'd like to keep this open, read it a little more in depth. I just glanced over it, but I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Councilor Annis?
I just want to add, if you think it would be advantageous for the council to hold off and having any discussions on this until the TPZ has concluded, I'd be more than happy to bring that up at leadership next Tuesday.
I don't think there's any harm with the council talking about it at the same time as TPZ's talking about it. I would just hope that we could get a few meetings to talk about it and have our new planner review it with us, and so that we could respond back to the council and or to the subcommittee and give our recommendations. That's all. But I don't object the council talking about it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you very much. I look forward to talking with the commission more about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Claffey, you had a question?
It'd be for later. Sorry, raise.
Okay, no problem, Commissioner. Craig, could we keep this on the agenda for our next meeting, please?
Yes, actually, do you even want it on your next agenda, because the new planner won't be here then?
Be here.
So just
yeah,
hold.
why don't we hold it and put it on the following one? Yeah, hold it and we'll put it on her first meeting or
right
second meeting. Yeah. Good suggestion. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nothing else on that, we'll go to public participation. If there's anybody from the public, please raise your hand and you can Rose Lyons, go ahead.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I may be premature. Is this public participation in general or on this plan that was just presented?
I'll allow you to make any comment you can.
All right. Because it says for items not listed. And it's in general, it's this as well. I know not you, but maybe Glenn mentioned the possibility of additional housing in the next year or so at Victory Gardens. I know that the expansion's been talked about for a couple of years now, but I've heard nothing further about it. I was just wondering if anybody had an update on that. And then there was another comment about other housing in the future. Just curious if you can share anything with us as to what the plans may be for affordable housing, or if there's any kind of plans for senior housing. I just want to thank the committee and Glenn for the work that they've done on this. I wish it had been done a few years back after the initial housing needs study, but it's here, and I hope the people will comment on it and you can come up with a good plan for the town. And I will say that I agree with Glenn about the affordable housing. As far as I can see, just on my street alone, within the last 3 or 4 years, houses have sold to young couples that come in, buy from us older folks that are ready to move on to smaller places or into facilities, or unfortunately have passed, and their children are selling the houses. So there's a lot of affordable housing in Newington, but I think we do need to make it more readily available for others that can't afford to buy a house too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. I appreciate your comments. Craig, how many units is Dakota? Is that 108 units?
It was 108, but only 85 of them are affordable. The others are market rate.
Okay, so 85. And how about veterans?
Well, we haven't heard anything from the VA in well, maybe about a year now about that next one. So I don't know what the status of it is.
Do you know how many units it was affordable or over there?
All of it was affordable. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can go back and look and let you know, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public?
Doesn't appear anybody else at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, James. Any remarks from the commissioners?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Claffey.
One thing, and I know we have a new body of CEO, and I know what I'm going to bring up is a very delicate subject in regards to COVID and small businesses and local businesses and supporting businesses. But as I drive up and down the Berlin Turnpike and around town, I know we have put orders in place to allow certain signage to be exempt from the signage requirement. And I know it's a very delicate discussion you have with a small business who has a sign out front, but it's gotten a little out of hand, not in regards to the restaurants that are delivering or open and who's not. These are from repeat offenders from 1, 2, 3 years ago worth of offenders all over the town.
Yep.
Specifically on the Berlin Turnpike with banners or the stakes in the ground with the big flags. I use flags lightly. I'm not saying it's a type of flag, but I don't know the name. I call it a banner. But it's a vertical banner. On repeat offenders, there's sandwich signs at the curb on Berlin Turnpike leaned up against things. And Craig, and I know it's a delicate thing, but it's getting a little out of control. Non-restaurant stuff, the restaurant ones with outdoor seating have been fine and abide by it. And it's all the ones that want to kind of jump on their bandwagon, but it gives them, the ones that we kind of allow because of the pandemic, a bad name. And if someone wants to drive up and down the Burn Turnpike, you see what I mean. Like Town Fair Tire has brakes, a brake advertisement out on the curb. There's a salon that has chair rental signs, and I know that's kind of a touchy thing. Kind of get what I'm saying.
I understand completely, Commissioner Claffey. I understand. It's been one of those things where we knew that we were getting a new zoning enforcement officer.
Yep.
We're also getting a new planner. I
Yep.
think
Okay.
that it would be wise of this commission to sit down with both of them and explain to them how we would like to see the zoning enforcement enforced in a uniform, consistent manner in the future, with some business-friendly aspects to it for consideration during this COVID, without it getting carried away, without signs in the right of way. And
I mean,
and
some have come to us, like I think recently a mattress company came, so they're having one of their sales, and we've had PC Richards come to us and we've approved, or in July we did the tents and banners. But I'm just saying in general, it's gotten a little out of control.
Yeah, we've been more than lenient during this COVID, and I think that once we get our new staff on board, if we have a meeting, I think so that we can give them direction, so that we could stay on top of it and hopefully have an improvement in that zoning enforcement. I'm sure we will.
I want to make it abundantly clear. I'm not against these businesses doing certain things. I'm a small business owner. I don't have the fortunate ability to put a sign in my front yard. My neighbors would probably scream. So like I feel for them, but it's a lot of the repeat offenders, and I think Craig knows them all. He's shaking his head. So it's repeat offenders. It's not like the new guy in town. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Any other remarks from commissioners? I want to thank everybody for participating in the meeting. It was a long meeting. I think we did a very nice job with everything, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody at our next meeting in 2 weeks. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you, James, for all your work.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.